headlining topic,
Mm-hmm.
the spoiler cast element of this,
Mm-hmm.
the tragedy of Macbeth.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I see we both dressed in our like muted colors here. This black and
oh
white
man,
film. Just
that would have
saying.
been really cool if I did like a green screen, just photo of my normal background, turn it black and white,
Yeah.
and like, yeah, should have thought of that. Yeah. So this is the tragedy of Macbeth on Apple TV Plus.
Mm-hmm.
It's Cohen film.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Joel?
Yes. He's the
Cohen.
one that Mcdormand is married to.
Yeah. So kind of a duo making this film along with Denzel Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't seen it and you care, spoilers. We have fortunately on hand uh a resident Shakespeare expert.
Why,
I mean,
thank you.
I should have put like your qualifications on your lower third
Right,
for
right.
talking about Shakespeare tonight.
My
Yeah.
masters, all the
Mhm.
Shakespeare plays I've been in. I haven't been in Macbeth though.
Ah,
I've done Lady Macbeth's famous monologue, you know,
okay.
out damn spot. But I haven't actually been in Macbeth.
Okay.
Not a lot of opportunity there. There's obviously in the theater world a lot of superstition around the play.
Interesting.
Um, so yeah, it's the play. When you're in a theater, you don't ever say Macbeth
Okay.
because it's bad luck. You have to say the play that's not named
I feel like tempting fate.
or the Scottish play is what you call it.
Mm,
So anyway,
okay.
just little trivia,
What?
little theater
Okay.
trivia for you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's perfect. You can lay it on me because I am what I would basically consider Shakespeare illiterate. Um, I have limited exposure to Shakespeare, though I will say
Mhm.
that n- I did like Macbeth when we read that in school.
Sure.
That was one that we did read, and I did think
We
that one
did
was pretty
too.
cool.
We
So,
did too. Yeah, we actually I had a couple of teachers who were very very into Shakespeare, which is probably what helped kickstart my love of
mhm.
the bard and yeah, I was always volunteering to read. I felt like I really got his language and so I played a variety of roles in Macbeth, my favorite being the Weird Sisters. Um but yeah, played a lot of roles in Romeo and Juliet, Julius Caesar. Yeah, we had some good stuff.
Yeah, I was Friar Lawrence, and as we when
Nice.
we read Romeo and Juliet, so
Nice.
I
I
liked that
was
character.
I was at times Juliet, sadly with one of my friend's boyfriends at the time. So of course, like in middle school, that was like a big
Right.
deal that
Yes.
he was playing opposite, for the balcony scene. My God. Um,
Mhm.
and then I was the nurse, trading body jokes with Mercutio, and that was really fun, especially because looking back on it now, I definitely only got like maybe half of them, and probably half again were wrong. So yeah,
Okay.
that was a good time.
Yeah. So tell us what you appreciate about most about Shakespeare, what you love, what's drawing you to him. So you said already, like you probably have some teachers that were passionate about it that can help
Hmm.
kickstart things that you kind of feel like the language. Would you say that when you say that did it resonate with you, or
Hmm.
you just were able to understand it better than most, or
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly a number of things for me about Shakespeare. Of course, like you said, I had teachers who were very passionate about Shakespeare, so that helped. I felt like I picked up on understanding the language a little bit quicker than my classmates did. So there's a sense of pride in like figuring out the puzzle, like
Mhm.
when you get it and you're just like, I get this. Like I feel the cadence, like you just feel like you start to understand the words when you speak them out loud in a really different way, and you're just like, even though 2 seconds ago I had no idea what this word meant, I somehow feel like I do now.
Yeah.
So
I
there's
understand what you're saying.
yeah, there's just like a trick of it where you're just like, I'm in this, I get this, and suddenly it just clicks with you. Um, and I feel like, setting aside the debates about, whether or not Shakespeare really wrote all of his plays, kind
Mhm.
of just accept it at face value for now. It's hard not to be attracted to that kind of genius, whose works resonate how many hundreds of years later, that we're still studying and finding so fascinating, and just like the sheer volume, the output that he did, um, and you know, his coining of phrase that we still use,
Mhm.
the words that he invented. I mean, if some accounts are to be believed, he's, invented tens of thousands of new words. I
Mm.
mean, that's just insane that one person could do so much. It's hard not to just, kind of pour over those texts and just be like, wow, how did this one person accomplish all of this? And speak stories that, you know, might not resonate in terms of we don't have kings and queens and we're not fighting over thrones, but there's still such a human element in each of his stories, whether it's a husband and wife relationship, a father daughter, um, you know, like brother and sisters. There's just so much humanity in these, epic stories of love, of power, of tragedy, of comedy, um, of history, of war, of, you know, epic love. Yeah.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Shakespeare was viewed eventually as a pretty, like, popular, great
Mhm.
entertainer, right? At the time, it was
Mhm.
very kind of uncommon for a lot of, I think, what we look back on, we see that they didn't, in their time, get the recognition that we feel they would have deserved now. Whereas I think Shakespeare's, he kind of feels the other way around, and we like continue that on,
Yeah.
but like got the recognition at the time.
Yeah, I mean, he had his high and low points, of course, like anyone did, and he started off pretty slow. And he didn't write everything that was perfect. Um, and yeah, like I said, he and the other chamber actors were struggling for a while, and then he was able to start writing things that were resonating with his common audience, and
Sure.
just kind of like carried him up and up and up the ladder to be performing for monarchs and noble lords and ladies and things like that. So
Yeah. So why did, for something that was like, grew to popularity and with a very specific or, as far as I'm aware, unique way of writing,
hmm
how come more of that didn't? I feel like a lot of, maybe we're getting at some already with, like, when you say with phrases and things we still use today or whatever.
hmm
But there definitely is, I feel like in pop culture things today, we do come to a lot of new words and lingo and
hmm
slang and stuff, and it does change. Like, you feel like there was enough of a, so he had a large influence in this way, and the idea that it came from one man, because like I get lots of gamer slang or lingo, or maybe from martial arts or something like it's like different
yeah,
segments, but they're all from different spaces. You just
that's
say that.
yeah, that's what I mean. Like all of that lingo didn't originate with one person. Like if you traced
Mhm.
it back, it would come from different groups, different people, like different, media per se.
Yep.
But it wouldn't be like one person who just
Yep.
like spread it out. And like that's Shakespeare here.
Well, I don't think it came through in my notes well, but I definitely went through a journey watching this. At first, I'm like, okay, they're definitely going with the Shakespeare English. Okay, getting that.
Mhm.
I didn't know what they were gonna do for sure with that. And then I'm like, okay, I feel a little like an art student, and
Mhm.
next up is poetry slam. I felt like a little
Yeah.
pretentious inside. And then
Yeah.
and then it continued on. I was like, but now all of a sudden it's like this sounds I started to sound beautiful, you
Mhm.
know? Like you say, like a cadence or something. It started to be at first, I'm like trying to really focus, what are this? And then it sort of just like fit. And I
Yep.
don't know. It just kind of mellows you
Clicks.
out after a while. Yeah. And
Mhm.
so I thought that ended up being uh pretty beautiful watching because I haven't watched much really either in terms of like, reading is one thing, but then watching it being performed, another. And
Yeah,
yeah.
and I mean, as any student of Shakespeare will tell you, Shakespeare is meant to be spoken. There's
Mm.
just something that's lost in simply reading it, even though I do.
Mhm.
Um, it's just such a language meant to be spoken, and just the inflection, the cadence give you so much clue to the meaning that it's so much harder when you just read. So yeah, this is if you want to get into Shakespeare, performance is where it's at.
Nice. So, how many other versions of Macbeth have you seen put to film or stage?
So I've seen Macbeth once on stage. Like I said, there's not a lot of call for Macbeth on the stage. It's people get very skittish in the theater about it. Um, and then I've seen my favorite adaptation of Macbeth is Ian McKellen and Dame Judi Dench
Mm.
in film. And it's very much like this, where it's not black and white, but it's more like a taped production on a soundstage, and there's
Mhm.
much less even scenery,
Mhm.
and much less, kind of surrounding backdrop. So it's very like, BBC took I think they did actually, kind of just quickly through a staged adaptation that they were doing over at the Royal Shakespeare Company, and filmed it, which they do quite often.
Sure. Mhm.
But just watching those two actors do this is amazing. And this movie felt very reminiscent of those performances. Um, Especially because while Ian McKellen and Judi Dench were younger then,
Mhm.
they were still older typically than what you think of Macbeth is.
Oh, okay.
And I think there's something about, like, how we know Ian McKellen and Judi Dench now, you just sort of, like, perpetually see them as older. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
they're just, like,
Yeah.
perpetually, like, in their 50s and 60s at least to
Yeah.
me.
Mhm.
Like, there's not, like, 20-year-old Ian McKellen somewhere. It just doesn't happen. He just
Well, our
skips right
leads
over.
in this one aren't particularly young.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that was actually pretty unusual,
Hmm.
that they were this much older, because usually Macbeth is
Oh, in
cast
this
younger.
version. Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's why it sort of again reminded me of that. Like,
Sure.
we ripped it from the stage and cast these two older leads in this, but just kind of took it a little bit more abstract, a little bit more art house.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we should talk about some specifics. I I don't know what drew me to this exactly. I guess it was the idea that I liked Macbeth when I read it, and it was very odd slash interesting to see Denzel being Macbeth. So I was like, okay, what is this gonna be like?
Like,
And
in the sense of him being Macbeth specifically, or him being in Shakespeare? Like him,
uh,
sorry, being in Shakespeare, doing Shakespeare.
I guess both. I was thinking more about being Macbeth, but I guess when
Mm,
you
okay.
mention it, I suppose both. But yeah, I mean, I've been on record before saying like I think uh, Denzel never comes off as not acting well. Like it's not he's always solid. I just often see Denzel in a lot of the
Mm.
roles. And a couple exceptions. And
Yeah.
I haven't
Mhm.
seen every all of his films or whatever, but when the film opened, I thought, okay, it's cool. I like this kind of trend that we're doing sometimes a 4:3 aspect and black and white. Caught on quick with the whole kind of doing things on like you say, it's like on a set sort of thing. So it did feel almost in a way of watching a high production play.
Mhm.
Um, I just really started falling in love with the look of it, like the
Mm.
harsh shadows. It's interesting choices, the way everybody, like, so often they're becoming right at the camera, very
Mhm.
central to the frame. And
Mhm.
watching the special features later, then they had called out how they wanted to do this 4:3 to really focus on the performance of the actor, you really get up
Right.
close or whatever. And so I think that carried through. Um, see, how would you like the presentation?
I liked it for the most part. There were aspects that I wasn't completely in love with. Um, like the very kind of fakey looking starry sky. It just
Okay.
felt like, even though I know a lot of other things, especially when they were kind of walking through the more natural parts of the world, that when they were in the outside,
Yeah.
I know a lot of that was effects, especially because, like you were saying, we watched the kind of, bonus material talking about all of the effects that they did, especially at the end where
Mhm.
they were like moving grass and things like that. That didn't feel like, hey, these are effects right now.
Mhm.
And then that sky really felt just out of place
Okay.
somehow. Just
Okay.
not quite fitting. So, wasn't often, but I just felt like maybe something could have been done there. And especially I felt that way when Frances McDormand as Lady Macbeth was casting Macbeth's fateful letter to her, telling her like, "Hey, I met the Weird Sisters. They named me Thane of Cawdor. They said I was going to be king. Like, we're going to talk about the great things that are in store for me. Now burn this letter." And she did, and then she sort of like opened a door and like cast it out into the cosmos, and I was just like, "Where is this? What is that
Okay.
random, closet door to space Narnia?" Um, so yeah, so I didn't quite enjoy that aspect of it. So the sky and the universe feel didn't match what I felt from, like you were saying, kind of like the very shadowed and heavy kind of set looking things. Like everything
Mhm.
was, when they were in a building was very like shadowed and geometric, and there were bright white spaces and dark blacks. It didn't really fit that
Okay.
element of the set building.
Okay. Yeah, I think to me it was one of the biggest positives in bringing something unique to this was
Mhm.
how ethereal it felt. So it it felt very it didn't feel particularly grounded, like there
Yeah.
is moments where, because here's a picture right now, it's surrounded in fog and mist, and that was very common, and it felt larger than real life,
Mhm.
and not um and I like that. It felt like out of a place out of time and space in a way. It's
I
almost be
agree
like,
with you.
it's like if a doctor who the doctor visited some place and peered up, and it's like, where am I? When am
Yeah.
I? It just, and so it was kind of a cool way to tell this story that, has been able to impact people for many, many years, but in a very kind of like, so it was almost weird when they would talk about Scotland and things
Mhm.
that bring you back to reality in a
Mhm.
sense and place you. So,
Yeah, I agree with you that I liked the very abstract nature of the setting. I think it's just very specifically the element of space, if we're talking about cosmos space, that
mhm,
didn't quite fit into the rest. Even though, it didn't always match itself. Everything didn't, look the same. Sometimes things looked more realistic, sometimes things looked more abstract and geometric, and that was fine. Like I said, it was literally just that element of, you know, the universe that
yep.
felt off to me.
And a couple of other things we learned in the bonus content was how they painted on some shadows. I thought that was
Mhm.
cool. They wanted to
Yeah.
get like these very stark, specific shadows, and so they just paint them
Yeah.
on the set. Because they had a lot of still camera shots. It's not one of
Mhm.
those things, those like sweeping, panning shots and all that stuff. So that could work. And then that they used theater lights
Mhm.
largely for this, for like to reinforce the kind of stage feel and the harsh, intense lighting as
Yeah.
opposed to like all the softboxed kind of theater lights they would always do. So, or movie theater, like cinema lights.
Yeah, movie
So,
lights, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love that there were, several different ways that they felt like they were calling out to being on a stage. Like I was saying, some of the backdrops felt very flat and static, and it just felt like, painted backdrops that, go up on like the fly system and you interchange like here's
Yeah.
generic slab, back building number 1.
Hmm.
So that was really fun. Um everything felt so in the foreground, which is what you can do on a stage. You don't really have a whole lot of depth, to go far back in and out. So, I love that everything felt like, okay, we've only got this much space in the foreground to work with, so here's where we're going to be.
Hmm.
Like you were saying, the very harsh lighting, the very white whites and deep blacks. And then even like fade out in scenes. I really enjoyed that because it felt in certain moments it's very like hitting the note of like here's the end of the speech, here's where the actor would walk off the stage and the lights would go dim
Hmm.
and the audience would be clapping.
Hmm.
I almost expected to hear that at times.
Hmm.
So the timing on some of those was really great.
Yeah, and the looking at the camera, I caught that a few times. It's
Hmm.
like an actor looking at you in the audience,
Indeed.
So, yeah, I thought that was fun as well.
That is such, I'm just gonna say as an actor, that is such a risky move sometimes.
I
Es
bet. Yeah.
Especially if you're not a veteran, because sometimes you think, like, "Oh, I'll, like, look out at my family," and then it just, like, jolts you out of whatever you're doing, and
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh my god, it's my mom. Blah. What was I
Mhm.
saying? What was I doing?" And sometimes it can be fine, and sometimes it can be very funny, especially if you've got one of those, like, "Oh, we're breaking the fourth wall" moments, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we were at a show in Vegas. It was a great show,
Mhm.
and it was on a small circular stage that they would do it. Comedy thing with a lot of like kind of tricks and feats of strength and such. And one woman clearly did not know what she was signing up for when she went here, for their like raunchy humor and
Sure.
stuff like that, was not on board. And it was bothering me as an audience member, for one.
Sure.
I'm like, everyone else here is having fun, and you, lady, are not. And I can't stop looking at your sour face.
Yep.
It was clearly getting to the actors as well,
Mhm.
because they're performing. And so I remember choir teachers saying like, make a connection with someone. And if you can make them feel, you're doing your job. If you can
Right.
see it in their eyes, or if they're just like dead, they're not selling it. And so obviously you could be connecting with that one person that's gonna be dead.
Mm,
You
yep,
can't
it's not
you
feeling it.
can't get them. Yep.
Yep.
They eventually called this woman out, and they're like, you know, "Are you enjoying this?" Whatever. And
Oh god.
she's like, "Yeah." She nods or whatever, and then he's like, "Well, make your face show it," or something like that. Yeah, it was
Ooh.
like I mean, it was with this guy's character kind of. He was
Sure.
kind of a snap sort of guy or whatever, and
Mhm.
he would he'd be kind of mean. So he's the one that brought it up, but man, I don't think it made it better. I don't
Yeah.
think it made it better. Anyways, yeah, theater work. Yes.
Theater work.
Mhm. Um, let's see. So, what are the things you really want to talk about with this? I can go on with all kinds of stuff, but we got performances we haven't really talked about, how they did,
Yeah.
and
I am going to say that I really think Frances McDormand as Lady Macbeth is the standout here. I'm not saying Denzel didn't do a great job, but I really think she especially nailed it. everything about her character felt genuine and authentic, and every time she opened her mouth, it was just like, naturally, this is what I'm gonna say. There was no artifice, there was no
Mm,
reading lines, there was just her as Lady Macbeth saying what she felt, what she thought, what seemed so obvious to her. I
yep.
just every one of her monologues, I just thought she nailed it.
I agree. I agree. Still I liked Denzel's performance. I
Mhm.
thought it was good because that was one thing I was gonna bring up. It's like I think he's nominated for Best Actor here.
I believe so.
And so I was wondering like if it's deserved or not. That's one of my questions going in. Um
I'm gonna be mad if she's not nominated, I guess, and he is, unless he's just got like a real weak field.
um yeah.
Though I don't necessarily know that that should be taken into huge consideration, but
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Best actor, best actress. Um okay. Oh yeah. Denzel Washington, he's nominated.
mhm.
And she is not.
Oof, I'm
Let's
mad.
let's check supporting
I mean,
actress.
maybe
No.
mad, mad.
So yeah. So
She
because
she
the
deserves the nod more than he does. I'm gonna say that right now.
yeah, so the field for best actor is Javier Bardem, Benedict Cumberbatch, Andrew
Mm.
Garfield, and Will Smith.
Is Garfield for
That's
Tick Tick Boom?
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yep. So
Sorry, I was just trying to remember what he was
yeah.
in that would be
I don't
nominated.
know any of those movies other than King Richard that Will Smith is in. I've heard of that one.
Mhm. I know,
So
Cumberbatch is The Power of the Dog, which I believe is a
yes.
Netflix film,
Okay. Okay. Huh.
and I know
Well,
that's
yeah.
nominated for a lot, so I'm interested in seeing that, but tangent, we'll shelve that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I am highly disappointed,
Okay.
highly disappointed that she is not nominated because I really just think she outdid Denzel. I'm
Mhm.
not gonna say it was just like a smearing, like, not that he couldn't hold his
No.
own, but again, she just edged him out in her performance. Everything
I
just felt more true and authentic.
I thought there were solid performances all around pretty much,
Yeah.
so I was happy with performances in general, but yeah, I agree that McDormand was a standout. Um,
I will say out of the 2 Shakespeare films that I've seen Denzel in, I I do prefer him, I think, in Much Ado About Nothing,
okay.
where he has license to be funny and comedic and
Mm,
expressive and grand as the Duke. Like, he's just a little bit more fun.
mhm.
Um, and I just feel like that fits him better. Not that he can't do, this level of seriousness and this level of tragedy. I just think out of the 2 performances, I think I prefer him in the
I
other.
mean, I loved him running out of the dining hall, chasing,
Yeah.
things not there, and then,
Oh, it's
waking up.
Banquo's ghost, but it's a raven, so it's the weird sisters just
Mhm.
playing games. Oh, I loved that.
Yeah. And I love how the Weird Sisters were portrayed. I thought it was
Yes.
so cool. So when
So
you
good.
first see him and it's like the one with 2 more reflections in the water and they become
Mhm.
one, I thought that was great. And then in the
Mhm.
rafters, I just thought that was really fun.
Yes. Also, I'm not gonna lie, there were some actors in here that I was just like, "Look at you from Harry Potter." Like,
Oh, yeah?
you know what I mean? Like, Dudley was in there.
Mhm.
He's
Yeah.
Malcolm, the son. And then the Weird Sisters were played by Catherine Hunter, who I believe is Arabella Figg, the
Ah.
the squib who lived next door to Harry and, like,
Yeah.
has to
You're right.
testify that he sees the
That looks
Dementors
like
or
her.
whatever. Um,
Yeah.
And then I thought there was one more guy in there that I was just like, "Hey guys, like you having a little reunion over here?"
So you see the guy on the screen right now?
Ross, yeah.
Okay, I went through the whole movie not knowing who that was.
They
Like,
don't say his name.
okay,
I
because
mean,
I'm like,
they might once, but they generally don't. Like Macbeth is named often, like Duncan and Banquo and
mhm,
Macduff are all named quite often, but yeah, he
okay.
is not.
I I really liked him in this. I thought he was a interesting character, and I didn't remember what he was gonna do. So,
Right. Yeah,
that was
he's the little weasel man,
beneficial.
isn't he?
Mhm.
Just
Yeah.
snaking around, kind of being a little opportunist, serving whoever's working out for him.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
But I liked his outfit. Like the clothes for him was very good.
Mhm.
And yeah, he was fun to watch. Um, I think I wrote down a couple lines because you'd mentioned too, like what screw
Professor
your perch, the
Moody.
sticking post.
Sorry.
Wait.
I was trying to find the last Harry Potter guy, Professor Moody.
Oh
He was
yes, of
Duncan.
course. Of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't even
sorry.
think of that when I
It was
watched
really
it.
bothering me. I was like, "Ah, I'm missing a
Brendan
big one
Gleeson,
here."
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he
Okay,
did a good
anyway.
job. I was excited to see him too. I
Yes.
didn't make the connection, and yes, Moody, of course.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, so different. Like,
Yeah.
he's got both eyes and a beard.
Yep.
I have to say, while we're on the subject of him, I really enjoyed his performance when he realizes, Macbeth is there to kill him. Like, what an awful moment that you could just watch it transform on his face, where he wakes up, kind of disoriented, but he sees a friend and he's trusting. And, Macbeth is like, "Oh, it's okay. Like, shh, it's fine." And he's still like, "Okay." Like, you know, and then the
Mhm.
second his hand kind of creeps over his mouth and he just like, "Oh shit," realizes.
Yeah.
Just what an incredible range to have to convey without words. And I think he did a
Mhm.
good job.
Yep. Yeah, the whole scene I liked a lot. The going down the hallway with the large
Mm,
thuds, the
yes.
dagger coming out of the sleeve, seeing the
Footfalls.
dagger on the
Footfalls felt very
door.
like yeah, footfalls very felt very important in this. They were always like this extra loud sound. I think I
Mhm.
have a note about it somewhere, there's just like it's very like footsteps of doom, your fateful
Mhm.
footfalls. It just felt like, you're walking along this path and there was just this emphasis on that. So, yeah, I really liked that walk too.
Mhm. I don't I don't know what the line was that I wrote it in response to, but my response was, "I will not come for your woman's breasts. No, thank you."
So it's Lady Macbeth basically saying like, come spirits. She's like saying, "Come you spirits, unsex me
Yeah,
here.
yeah, that's right.
Come for my woman's breasts and
Yes.
leech my milk and fill it
Mhm,
with I think like bile or something like that." Um but yeah, so she's basically saying like stop up all my human emotions and human tendencies, frailties, weaknesses, my womanly heart that tends towards kindness. I have to be cold, unfeeling, cruel. So take of me like in Shakespeare's day they were very very obsessed with like fluids because your different
mm,
fluids would, tell like what kind of humors you had and had all effects on like your health and your disposition. So her reference to like milk is, very apt for the time, of course.
sure. Yep.
So, yeah, it's an odd way to phrase it, but it's
Mhm.
basically saying like stop up any like motherly, instincts and caring that I might have for another so that I can do this horrible thing that I need to do for my husband.
So, is there a greater motivation that I am not understanding for, Macbeth and his wife to so desire the throne? Like, is there something more or like just a deserving feeling like we should have this and
Yeah.
idea that we're not being given this is such an insult? Like it's just a pride ego thing, or
Yeah, there's kind of several different themes, especially in this movie, that are explored in relation to that. Um, I was, kind of listening into the um the extra bonus material and then reading some articles online talking about, these particular Macbeth's age, Macbeth and his lady, and how there's a really big thing about neither of them having any children. And
mm,
so and they changed a line, I don't remember which one, but in this version to kind of emphasize the fact that there's been that disappointment and that void in their lives. And so in this particular version, that's a bit of a reason where they have this like void and gap where they have no kids. So being king and queen kind of fill this vacuum and this, empty
mm,
space that they have. Um in Shakespeare's original, there's not so much emphasis on that, but there is this, one notion of the idea that when you've been told that this is your fate,
right.
like how far do you go to just like make it happen? How far do you like expect it to just come to you? And,
Yeah.
when there's like seeming obstacles in your way, like, you know, Macbeth is named Thane of Cawdor, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, like this is so great! Like I'm eventually going to be named king. Like cool." And he seems very content to wait on that. But then suddenly Malcolm is named prince, and he's like, "Whoa, whoa, that's not what was supposed to happen. Like, how am I going to get around this obstacle?" So
Hmm.
there's a certain sense of like how far do you go when you know what your fate is supposed to be, and it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like it's happening.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so
Yeah.
that's definitely an aspect of that.
How much of your destiny is in your hands
Right.
when you know your destiny,
Right,
supposedly.
right. Yeah, what happens when you expect things,
Yeah.
when you're promised things and it seems like they won't be fulfilled? Do you still trust that fate is going to make that happen, or do you then say, "Okay, well, this is an unforeseen obstacle. I better make this happen."
Mhm. Yep. Okay, yeah, I remember in high school always being, okay, theme,
Yeah.
power of
Mhm.
suggestion being the thing, but,
Yeah.
so I wrote down, is it common that not every? Because I would think that if you're I don't know, I guess this is kind of just maybe emblematic of how long Shakespeare has been done and how many times.
Mhm.
Because, like, for starters, it's weird to me that people don't have English or Scottish accents.
Mhm.
I mean, is it normal for an actor to attempt the accent or to,
Yes.
like, just okay.
I would
So
say in this one, it didn't bother me necessarily because we were talking about how abstract this is, how like out of place in time. There's just
mhm,
certain references that you can't get out of Shakespeare. Talking about Dunsinane and Inverness. They're being in Scotland. Like you just can't.
right.
You could, but I just think it would be so noticeable to try and take those references out. So it's really just like an abstract country of Scotland here. So I
Yeah.
didn't particularly bother me, but yeah, it's very normal in your traditional Shakespeare to attempt either.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I came to too, is like the accents, and then like having at this point in time a bunch of black people in Scotland is all
Mhm.
very odd, but again, I guess that's how I kind of rationalize it, was just how, again, ethereal and, like you say, out of time this is feels, you
Mhm.
know. It's very artistic,
Yeah.
and it's like definitely a kind of film I wants to see more of. Like we did the Lighthouse, even, black and
Yeah.
white, 4:3, just kind of like going throwing it all out there, being a little, it's kind of the exact opposite of what I was complaining about, as with Hollywood and stuff. It's
Yeah.
very specific and it's
Yeah.
very stylized, and yeah,
Yeah, I
I'm
think you can kind of see that reflection in, critic scores on, for Rotten Tomatoes, for example, is like a 93% and audience is like 76. That's okay.
Hmm.
It's okay
Yeah.
that like 90% of the audience also didn't love this. It's not a movie for everyone. It's
Yeah.
still good, clearly,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. I had a couple lines I had to write down that I liked a
Mm,
lot.
mhm.
Your leafy three screens throw down. I like that
Mhm.
for whatever reason. It's just like the forest is moving, and like,
Yeah.
yeah, just your leafy
That
screens throw down.
that
But
that was a
I guess
fun staging. I really
it's,
enjoyed that.
and then unnatural deeds do breed unnatural troubles.
Mhm.
I liked that line a lot. Uh,
Yeah, I like it as well because it sort of talks about this like spiral effect that Macbeth gets into. Once he starts with the murder of Duncan, then he's like, "Oh shit, now I got to murder his, attendants. Now I got to
yeah.
murder these other people. Now I got to murder these other people." And it's just like spirals like out of control because every
Hmm.
person keeps being a problem. Like it never stops being a problem for him.
Hmm.
And he never just gets to like enjoy being king because there's always somebody who's suspicious and always somebody who's like, oh, maybe if I just kill them, all of the questions will stop. Nope, they didn't. Okay, now it's this person that I gotta kill.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Did so I didn't know if is it in my head or was it intentional. I took note that it seemed like servants and more common people spoke more plainly.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
I did.
that's. I mean, there's not a lot of children in Shakespeare, but it's often true that servants, um, or attendants, or kind of
Yeah,
the
or
lower
the
class, if
kid.
you
Yeah.
will, speak more plainly.
Hmm.
Shakespeare does distinguish class at times for certain.
Because when the two attendants were kind of talking about Lady Macbeth as they're witnessing her in the courtyard and
Mhm.
stuff, they just seemed like it was a more simple kind of
Yeah.
talk. And then the
Mhm.
kid that's talking to his mom later,
Macduff, yeah. Mhm.
it seems very, again, it's like, wow, I don't have to think at all about what you're saying. It's
Mm.
just like, so I didn't know if it was it's just something I was getting used to or if it seemed more intentional. So
Yeah, like I said, there's not often children or like true young children. There might be like teens, obviously in
hmm.
Shakespeare, but yeah, servants and the like usually talk a bit more plain.
Yep. Um, what
I have to
else do you have to say about
say
this?
So I have to say, if we're talking favorite lines, there are a couple that I wrote down because I loved. One of my favorites is talking about the death of the original Thane of Cawdor very early on, and Ross comes in to report to Duncan, like, "Hey, it's done, it's all good," and he's like, "Nothing became him in life like the leaving of it," and I was just like, "Damn, that's such a cold eulogy." Like, you did nothing good in life except die. That was the one good thing you did. Just oof.
But it's a
Shakespeare
pretty
can
way to
be
say it.
cold. It is. It's a pretty way to say it, but I mean, when you stop and think about it,
Mhm.
oof, that's ice. Um, so I love that one. Let's see. Um, I really liked the line that Lady Macbeth has, where she talks about things without remedy should be without regard. And she's basically saying,
Mm,
like things that can't be fixed, aren't worth your time thinking about because there's no
right.
solution to fixing them.
Yep.
And it's it's a great line and it's such like a God, I feel only it was that easy. Macbeth
Sure.
obviously struggles with it and so do we all. There
Mhm.
there are things that we can't go back and undo, or there are problems that, we want to solve, but we can't, or there are thoughts that we have that we feel like, "Ah, why am I dwelling on this?"
Mhm.
And yet you do. And it's just, I don't know. I
What's the
that
line
line
again?
just uh things with where is it? Things without remedy should be without regard.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
problems that can't be solved don't bear
Mm.
thinking about.
That's
But
good
you
because
do.
I say all the time, I'm like, if don't worry about the things for which you do not have control over.
Mhm.
Like I say all the time. So this is a more concise, nice
Yeah.
way to say it. That should.
It's good. It's good.
Mhm.
And then speaking of like phrases that we still use, um, I really love the line, screw your courage to the sticking place, because it reminds me immediately, because I'm such a big nerd, of Disney's Beauty and the Beast, where Gaston is like rallying up the villagers to go get the beast, and he's like singing his song about like, yeah, we're going through the night, and he
Hmm.
like gathering up all his men, and he's like, screw your courage to the sticking place. It's like
Ah.
Disney just like ripped a whole line of Shakespeare, and we totally
Hmm.
got it. So like, look at that. Look at that whole phrase that came from Shakespeare that we still used in the 90s to
Yeah.
convey, you know, go be a man and go face your thing. Like, go be courageous.
You think Disney is referencing Shakespeare anymore these days?
I mean, probably.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think anyone there has
Probably
read
not.
Shakespeare.
Probably not as overtly as they did in some. Like, The Lion King is basically just like one big animated fuzzy version of Hamlet. So
Sure.
Um,
Nice.
but yeah, it's just like, look at that. See, like even in today's world, we use phrases like that, and we just like know what it
Yeah.
means.
Is there anything you really had issue with or didn't like at all? Yeah.
There was something, and again, this is kind of on the smaller side, but it was so distracting. This is a perfect shot. So you see, we're at the back of, if you're watching video, we're at the back of Frances McDormand's head, and
Hmm.
where the camera lens is focused beyond her to Denzel.
Hmm.
There were multiple times during shots like these when Frances McDormand was speaking, and you could see her mouth moving, and the sound absolutely did not match her lip movements. It was so far off that sometimes her mouth would be
Interesting.
fully closed, and like the words were still happening in the voiceover.
Was there something wrong with your sound system?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
I know this for sure. It happened way too many times to be like
Okay.
some weird glitchy thing. So please,
Interesting.
somebody go back and fix that, because it really took me out of some great speeches and great moments by Frances McDormand.
That's crazy. I wonder if I'd probably see that now next time watching, and it would drive me crazy because I didn't notice it at all.
It
So,
it caught my eye a little bit when she has that first soliloquy when she's talking to Macbeth after she like kind of wakes up from her nap, and she sees him, and they're hugging,
he
and she's
just
kind
gets
of
back
holding
home,
on to
yeah.
him, and there's like a camera angle from the back of her head, and I just sort of caught like, oh, that speech didn't match those lip movements, and then I was like watching again, I'm like, it's still not matching. And then in that scene I just pointed out, the same thing happened, and I was like, somebody's got to fix that.
Huh. Well, that's why she didn't get nominated, because they said that her lips weren't lining up right.
Oh God.
Her fault. So,
Yeah, some
mhm.
sound designer somewhere's got it coming.
Yep. Um, yeah, I took quite a few notes on this. I didn't know what I was gonna think of it. I really had a
Mhm,
good time with it.
mhm.
I thought I just really dug the vibe, and the way it was shot, and enjoyed the performances. So, yeah,
Yeah,
Ashley was gonna watch it with me, and it didn't quite work out, and I'm like, "Well, if you wanna watch it, I'll watch it again." Yeah, because it's not that super long either. That was nice.
yeah,
It's not this, like, it's not a 3-hour thing,
right.
It's not drawn out. It feels like stuff keeps moving and keeps happening, and, yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, I feel like it's a really solid and good movie. It's well made. There's nothing I would point to that says like this is the obvious weak link. Um, it's not perfect, but it's really good.
Mhm.
And one of the things I really found myself um clicking with in the bonus material is, just talking about the way that Frances McDormand and Joel Cohen worked as a husband and wife team. And I was like, what
Mhm.
a perfect play for that to happen on, about,
Yeah.
a husband and wife team,
Mhm.
trying to get on the same page. Because sometimes, the Macbeths really are, and sometimes they're not. Like sometimes one of them is going further and the other's like, woo. Like, I didn't know we were going there. And then sometimes, the other one goes a little bit further and they're like, oh man, okay,
I
I guess, we're taking it to the next level.
I don't know if it is be enough to be considered a stereotype or not, but I like it felt true to life to me in a lot of ways. Like when Macbeth lets her know of what he's heard that he can become,
Hmm.
she is so ready, like, do this, you know? She
Yeah,
is so
it's
amped
happening.
and like, you need to make this happen. And so it's one of those things like, having this woman by your side that's like pushes you,
Hmm.
to go somewhere or whatever. It's like hugely
Get
motivating
that
factor.
promotion or yeah.
Yeah, like, yeah, you can do it kind of. So they ends up doing it, and we get to a point where it's like, okay, now maybe pump the brakes.
Yep.
Like, I know I wanted you to do this, but can we just like not let's take it back a step. and
Yep.
and then it just, yeah, like
I didn't
spirals
mean
out of
for it to go
control.
this far.
Yeah, right. So it's a great, like, careful what you wish for, but then,
Hmm.
like, yeah, absolutely. I liked how that all played out.
Hmm.
And yeah. So
Yeah.
um well, I don't know. I kind of want to see him for me to absorb more Shakespeare. I feel like I need Cohen and McDormand to make another one in this kind of style.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're not the most popular, but any of the histories would become them well, I think. There's plenty of older women's roles there that McDormand could slide into. It's hard because when you think of like a lot of Shakespeare's, I mean, Hamlet obviously would be a really great one. She would be an excellent Gertrude, I think. Um, but yeah, when you think of Shakespeare, there's the most popular plays. It's really geared, for younger actors and younger um,
Hmm.
settings. So it's just yeah, it's hard to figure out what she could do. But
Well, and
Hamlet
I'd be
would
okay
Hamlet
with
would be
being.
good.
I'd be, if she's like just a kind of side character and like largely takes on a co-directing role, like I'd
Sure.
be fine with that too. But
Yeah,
I
I
just want to.
think after this performance, I'd love to see her again. So yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
like I said,
Yeah.
Hamlet would be a good one because that would have a good role for her to fit into.
Nice. Well, let's tweet at him.
Make
Get
it
all our
happen.
millions of followers to tweet at him as well. And
Start a movement.
yeah, right.
My
So,
God, what else are we gonna do tonight, John? You wrote a movie. We're starting a movement. Like, man, we're
yeah,
crushing this Monday thing.
right. Yep. All right. Well, yeah. Unless there's anything else, that's been the tragedy of Macbeth from
Hmm.
Apple TV Plus,
Yeah,
and
thumbs up.
yeah,
I think it's a
absolutely.
well done movie and definitely worth your time.
Hmm. Yep. So yeah, if you have the subscription, go and check it out. Give it time for your brain to acclimate to the dialogue and the presentation. Like, just give yourself a minute and it'll get there. So, um